there, Booksy. Welcome back to my channel. Way back in April, Mel from Mel's Bookland Adventures created a tag called the Choose Your Year book tag. It was an original book tag, and she was kind enough to tag me, and I haven't responded. Since then, a few other booktubers that I know have made their own responses to the tag and also tagged me. Sean the Book Maniac tagged me, Christopher from Books and Jams tagged me. So today's video is me responding to all of those tags. I'm gonna choose a year and tell you some books from that year and why I've read them, or why I'm going to read them, or why I'm not going to read them, or something like that. This is my response to the Choose Your Year book tag, created by Mel from Mel's Bookland Adventures. I'll link her original video down below. First prompt in the tag is to say the year that you're choosing and why. I could have chosen my birth year. I don't have a problem telling you how old I am, but I'm not going to tell you in this video because I'm not choosing that year. Maybe one day I'll come back and do that video, so I'm not going to reveal it yet. But I decided to choose the year 2001 because that's the year I moved to New York City. It was the beginning of the second part of my life, I suppose. I grew up in Jamaica. For most of my childhood, I wanted to visit New York. And in the year 2000, I got a chance to come here to visit, and I loved it. I felt like this is where I belonged. So I went back and changed everything that I needed to in order to relocate. Came here in 2001 and began a brand new life. So 2001 is the year that I'm choosing. It's the year that so many things happened. Right after I came here in August 2001, in September 2001 is when I started school. It's also when the World Trade Center building was attacked right in front of my eyes. And a lot of the plans that I had fell through, and I had to make new plans. So it was the year I learned a lot of things that I never knew, like terrorism and how it affects regular people. 2001 is the year I'm choosing, and that's why. Prompt number 2 is, which books published in that year have you read, or if none, which of them have you heard of? And Mel was so kind as to include a link to a Goodreads list, which gives us the 200 most popular books that were published in 2001, at least popular on Goodreads. There are lots of different ways that you can rank popularity. Goodreads seems to be a pretty widely used international platform, so I think this list was compiled based on ratings and number of books with the 2001 publication date that have been read and reviewed on Goodreads. I think is a pretty good estimate of the most popular books of that year. So I used it to come up with some of the books that I've read that were published in that year. I haven't read that many books though, according to this list, but there are a few more on my radar. But I'm happy to say that the #1 most popular book published in 2001, according to Goodreads, is Life of Pi, which I have read because of the actual publication date. It actually won the Man Booker Prize the next year, but I have read it, and in fact, I just ordered a copy a week or so ago, and it's making its way to me slowly from Book Depository because it's a book that I want to own. I read it last year. I'm going to be rereading it this year for my reading challenge to read all the previous Booker Prize winners. So according to the list, I read the #1 most popular book. I also read the #10 most popular book, which is Can You Keep a Secret by Sophie Kinsella. In the early 2000s, I was in college, and whenever I'd get a summer break or spring break, my first day off, I would head to the library and pick up all the pink-spined books that I could find and just go on a fun reading binge for my holidays. That was when the Sophie Kinsella books, Becky Bloomwood, Shopaholic series were coming out, and I read them all. So Can You Keep a Secret is the one that was published in 2001, and I've read that. I also read book number 37 on this popularity list, and that is Jemima J by Jane Green. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that book later on because it's going to come back to answer another question, so I'm not going to get into it too much right here. I also don't have it marked off on my Goodreads. I remember the title, but I don't have it marked off. I've also read, like I said, I read all the Shopaholic books. So Shopaholic Takes Manhattan, which is the second book in the Shopaholic series, also by Sophie Kinsella, that is book number 40, I've also read. Another book that was published in 2001 that I read is Empire Falls by Richard Russo. This actually went on to win the Pulitzer Prize the next year, because based on its publication date, it wasn't the 2001 winner. The 2001 winner was a book called The Adventures of Clay, Cavalier and Clay, I think, which I haven't read. But I read this one, Empire Falls, and I got this one at a used bookstore, or maybe a library sale way back in the early 2000s as well. Probably when this was a pretty new release, and it's gotten really beat up over the years. I've contemplated rereading this book because my husband and I have very differing views on this book. He said he read it and hated it. I remember reading it and really enjoying it. So at some point we plan to both reread this book and figure out if either or both of our opinions have changed. Wouldn't it be interesting if now he loves it and I hate it? But this is a book that was published in 2001 that I have read, Empire Falls by Richard Russo, the 2002 Pulitzer Prize winner. And according to the Goodreads popularity, this is the 42 most popular book that was published in 2001. Going down the list, I've also read book number 66, which is Eat That Frog, 21 Great Ways to Stop Procrastinating and Get More Done in Less Time. And that is by Brian Tracy. A few years ago, I read a lot of self-improvement, self-help books. And Brian Tracy is one of those authors who he's released a lot of books in that genre. And I read this, Eat That Frog. I subscribed to his YouTube channel. I used to watch his videos all the time. Yeah, I read a lot by him, and this is a really good one. I gave it a 4-star rating back when I read it. I don't own a copy. I think I gave my copy to someone back then because I had gotten everything that I needed out of that book, but now I don't remember all the things that were in it. I remember the title related to Eat That Frog is about when you set up your to-do list, you take the thing that is the most daunting, the most challenging, the thing that is the frog, and do it early. Do the thing that is required to check that unpleasant task off your to-do list. So you give it your best shot early in the morning, early in the day, when you have your most energy, when you have your most focus to offer to this daunting task. So those are the 2001 books from that list that I have read. Next part of that question is about books that were published in 2001 that you want to read. And the number 4 book on that list is The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, that I've been wanting to read for many years and just never gotten around to. The interesting thing about that book is that it was released on September 11, 2001, which I can't imagine that there were a lot of people lining up in bookstores to purchase that book on its publication date. Anne Brashear's Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. There is now a series of Traveling Pants books, and I've never picked it up. I'm finally going to read it. It's on my TBR in July. I've chosen it as the book that I'm going to read to fulfill a prompt in a reading challenge that I'm going to be doing between the months of July and October. So I've requested a copy. It's at the library waiting for me to pick it up. So it's a book that I'm going to be reading pretty soon. Other books that are on that list that I want to read include The Other Boleyn Girl by Philippa Gregory. I've watched the movie adaptation of that book, and I'd love to read more and know more about the Tudors. And then there's some books that I own that are on my shelves that are 2001 publications that I'd like to read. First of those being the 2002 Man Booker Prize winner, which is True History of the Kelly Gang by Peter Carey. This is a 2002 Man Booker Prize winner, but I bought it a month or so ago. I'm going to be reading it later this year for my Man Booker reading challenge, where I'm reading all the previous winners. So you'll hear more about this book coming up sometime soon. I also have Bel Canto by Anne Patchett. This is a book that I've owned for a couple of years now and have been wanting to read it and thought about reading it, but just haven't had time or keep forgetting that I own it and need to pick it up. So I want to read this one pretty soon. I don't know when. It will find its way onto my TBR. I also own Jonathan Franzen's The Corrections, which I got from a used book sale. I own 3 books now by Jonathan Franzen, and I still haven't read anything by him. I also own Freedom and Purity, and I don't even know if his writing style is for me, but This book shows up on some book lists, and I feel like it's a book that I will enjoy when I finally read it. Just hasn't happened yet. I also own The China Study, which is a nonfiction read, a collaboration between T. Colin Campbell and Thomas Campbell. And these are the doctors that appear in that documentary, Forks Over Knives. This book is mentioned in that video. And it's about a study that was done on Chinese people and how we can learn from their health studies and their health statistics. What are some of the things that we can learn to apply to make our health condition in the United States better? I've owned this book for a while, maybe about 2 years now, and I've read sections of it, but I've never read the whole thing. It's a book that I got intensely interested in, and a topic that I've been intensely interested in for a really long time, but I just haven't read the whole thing from cover to cover. But I want to read the whole thing at some point and maybe get a little bit better at applying some of these principles to my life. We could all stand to be healthier, right? Other 2001 releases that I'm really interested in but haven't picked up yet, don't own a copy, don't have it on my TBR for any immediate future plans, but Mystic River is a book that's interesting to me, as well as Cane River, 2 river books. And yeah, those are the books that are on that list that I want to read sooner rather than later. The next question, the next prompt is the most obscure sounding title. For me, that is the book that occupies the number 74 spot. It is entitled Don't Let's Go to the Dogs Tonight, An African Childhood by Alexandra Fuller. And it's supposed to be about a girl of Caucasian ethnicity growing up in Africa. Seems like she grows up somewhere between Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Zambia, because that's where Goodreads say the setting is, or settings are, because there are 3 different countries here. Don't let's go to the dogs tonight. It sounds weird, it sounds obscure. That's the word that Mel used. The 5th and final prompt is the strangest book cover. And I decided not to go down the rabbit hole that was available to me, because there's a list of 200 books here. I could click on each book and explore all the covers that Goodreads has available, which could take a really long time. But I decided to settle on the title that I thought was just the strangest to me based on what I knew of the book. The reason that this book cover is strange is that this is a book about a young woman who is very overweight. The synopsis is very clear to say that Jemima J is over 100 pounds overweight, and she's slighted by her social groups. She is left out of invitations. Her friends, her roommates kind of look down on her because she is not as thin, not as what they consider to be attractive as they are. The story is about her navigating the discrimination and ultimately rising above it, not just in the fact that she loses weight at some point in the book, but that her self-worth improves, where she no longer cares as much about what other people think she should look like. And so I find it ironic that a book that is supposed to be celebrating a young woman finding her own way, finding her own self-worth that is separate and apart from how others think that she should look, that a book that is supposed to celebrate that has a picture of a thin woman on the cover, because that is not how Jemima J looks for most of the book. So I thought that that was strange. I don't remember which cover was on the copy that I read, because it was many years ago that I read this book, and over the years I've seen multiple copies in bookstores and in libraries, and so I don't remember. But I definitely know that this was not the cover, because I know that I probably would have laughed at myself if I had read a book that was supposed to be about an overweight person that had a thin average person on the cover, because it doesn't represent the storyline. And so yeah, I think that that was the strangest book cover of these that I've read, at least that I remember. So that is my response to the Choose Your Year book tag. Thank you so much, Mel, for tagging me. I'm going to look up some people that I don't think I've seen them do this tag and tag them in the show notes. Sean calls them the show notes. I'll tag them in the description box down below. So Go ahead, look to see if you've been tagged. If you haven't been tagged and you want to do this tag, consider yourself tagged so you can do it. Just choose a year, go crazy. Tell us some books that you've read that were published in that year, or some books that were published in that year that you want to read, and let's just keep this tag going. Thanks for watching this video. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more from me. I have new videos coming soon. I am kind of on summer break. My summer schedule is a lot more relaxed, so I have way more time now to read and make videos. So you're going to be seeing another video from me pretty soon. I hope you'll come back for it. So let's talk in the comments, and until next time, happy reading. Bye.